Hockey fans worldwide, welcome to the greatest time of the year, the Stanley Cup playoffs. And with the games starting in less than a half hour, I need to get my predictions done. So these are the official Sports by Brack 2023 NHL Stanley Cup predictions. Now, a couple quick talking points before we go through the bracket. First talking point is that I am a fan of the Colorado Avalanche, so the western side of the bracket isn't necessarily what I think is going to happen. It is what I want to happen. As far as the Boston Bruins, the most prolific team this league has ever seen, I am not picking them to win the Cup, even though they are pretty much massive favorites to do so. I think if you look back at other leagues, other great teams, those teams fell short in the end. The Patriots come to mind when they went 16-0, lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. The Warriors were 73-9, ended up losing to the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. And then the Lightning from a handful of years ago, they tied the NHL record for wins and were swept by Columbus in the first round. So also Boston has the President's Trophy jinx, so even though it might not be smart, I'm going to take the field and say Boston does not win the Stanley Cup. And the third talking point before we get into the bracket is I wanted to have one of the wildcard teams move on. I think one of them will win their series. And it came down to the Jets beating the Golden Knights and the Islanders beating the Hurricanes. In the end, I took the Jets just because their offense is a lot better than the Islanders. They both have pretty good goalies, and Vegas tends to like to play lower scoring games. The Hurricanes, with their offensive issues, can play lower scoring games as well, but in the end, I decided to go with Winnipeg, even though it's probably definitely less than a 50% chance that they move on, but that is who I'm going with. So let's quickly run down the bracket here. We'll start with the Atlantic Division, the Bruins taking on the second wild card, the Florida Panthers. I think Boston wins this one in 5. We don't need to talk about the Bruins. We know what they are. The Panthers, Matt Tkachuk is a beast, but sounds like Alex Lyon will be in net. And even though he has had a nice little run here these last few weeks, in the end, he is Alex Lyon. And I think when the pressure mounts, he will revert to being Alex Lyon. Then we get to the 2-3 matchup, the Maple Leafs taking on the Lightning. The Maple Leafs have not won a series in how many years? So picking them to win this in 6 is definitely going against history, but the Lightning have played a lot of hockey the last 3 years. They have not necessarily been good since the trade deadline, and I think this is kind of where their end kind of shows up here, even though I do think if this gets to Game 7 with Vasilevsky in net, I would then flip this to Tampa Bay, but I'm going to go ahead and take Toronto in 6. Jumping down to the Metropolitan, we have the Hurricanes facing the first wild card, the Hurricanes. I kind of went over this one earlier in the video. Carolina has a nice, well-rounded team. No real superstar, and since Svechnikov was injured, their offensive output has dropped. Their power play is like 10% since he got injured, and with the Islanders having Sorokin in net, he could easily steal multiple games. These games are going to be 1-0, 2-1, so that favors the lower-seeded team. I'm going to take Carolina in 7. And then we get to the battle of the Hudson River. The Devils, the higher seed 2, taking on the Rangers, the 3. The Devils, I could see going both ways. I could see them just running roughshod through these playoffs, or I could see them, with their lack of experience, almost having to lose before they win, kind of like my Avalanche have done the last few years before ultimately winning the Stanley Cup last year. So I'm going to take the Rangers' experience level. Plus, I don't think the home ice advantage will be that much for New Jersey because there will be Rangers fans in the building. So I will take the Rangers in 7 games. Moving out west, we have my Avalanche taking on the first wild card, the second-year Seattle Kraken. The Avalanche are supposed to get Cale Makar and Josh Manson back for Game 1. However, there will be no Gabe Landeskog throughout these playoffs, so I don't see Seattle being that much of a real threat to the Avalanche. I have the Avalanche winning in 5. The Avs have been a tremendous road team, even going back to last year's playoffs where they won all 4 series on the road. So I think they could easily win both games in Seattle, drop one in Denver, and still win the series in 5. Then we have the 2-3 matchup, Dallas, the higher seed, hosting Minnesota. Dallas has Ottinger. The Wild have Fleury and Gustafsson. I have not yet seen who the Wild are going to begin the series with. My guess is probably Flower, because that way if he fails, you can always go to Gustafsson. I'm not sure you can go the other way around. In the end, Dallas just has more of a well-rounded team. Dallas has Jason Robertson, Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnston, Miro Heiskanen, where when you think of the Wild, you think of Kaprizov and not a whole lot after that. So I'll give it the 7 games, but I will take the Dallas Stars to move on. Moving out to the Pacific, I went over this earlier in the video. The Vegas Golden Knights taking on the second wild card Winnipeg Jets. Vegas tends to like to play lower scoring games. That can feed into a team with a good goalie. The Jets have Connor Hellebuck. He could easily, if he can stand on his head and win a game or two, the Jets, with their top line, guys like Scheifele, Kyle Connor, they can put the puck in the net. So I think I will take the Jets in 7. I don't expect them to win this round, but I need to have some type of chaos. That way we're not picking chalk. So we'll go with Winnipeg in that one. And then we got a rematch last year in the 2-3 series with the Oilers hosting the Kings. This was 7 games last year. I think it goes 6 this year. I mean, how do you stop McDavid and Draisaitl? The Kings will also be without Kevin Fiala to start the series. That's a big offensive blow to the Kings. And in the end, like I said, McDavid, Draisaitl, we're not even talking about Nugent Hopkins, Evander Kane. I mean, Edmonton, that may even be 5. I'll go ahead and take them in 6. So now we are down to the round of 8. Go back to the East. Boston playing Toronto. I went against history and gave Toronto 1 series win. I can't give them 2. So I will take the Bruins in 6 in that one. And then in the Metropolitan, went over the Hurricanes' struggles with scoring goals. That plays right into Igor Shesterkin and the Rangers. So I will actually take the Rangers in 5 in that one to move on to the Eastern Conference Final and a matchup with the Boston Bruins. Out west, again, going back to the fact that I'm an Avalanche fan, this is what I want to see, not necessarily what I expect to see. Dallas has given Colorado trouble in the past, and I could very easily see Dallas winning this series, but I will go ahead and take the Avalanche in 7. And then in the Pacific, we'll go ahead and take Edmonton in 5 or Winnipeg. Again, McDavid, Draisaitl is all you really need to say, so that sets up a Western Conference Final of the Edmonton Oilers and the Colorado Avalanche. So heading out east, I mentioned that I'm taking the field over Boston, so this is where I have Boston's run ending. I'll take the Rangers in 7 to get to the Stanley Cup Final. They were 2 wins away last year. They had a 2-0 lead on Tampa Bay before ultimately losing, so this year I think they make it all the way through. And in the West, again, not necessarily what I think is going to happen, but what I want to happen. I'll take the Avalanche in 7. Could easily see the Oilers winning that series in 5 or 6, but as an Avs fan, I want to go back to the Stanley Cup Final. I was in games 5 and 6 last year, and I want to go to at least a couple this year. So that sets up a Stanley Cup final of the New York Rangers and the Colorado Avalanche. And I've thought with my heart this far along in the video, repeating is such a hard thing to do. If Landeskog was playing in these playoffs, I might go ahead and say, you know what, let's go ahead and put them all the way through. But I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, the Rangers, for the first time since 1994, go ahead and win the Stanley Cup. I'm putting it down for 7 games. I don't know about you, but as a hockey fan, I want to see the Stanley Cup final go 7, preferably maybe even an overtime or 2, to really get our money's worth. So I will take the 2023 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers in 7 games. If you've made it all the way through this video, I appreciate you taking the time to watch it. Please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe buttons for me, and leave your comments below. Who do you think is going to win the whole thing? Who are some of your higher seeded teams that you think are going to bow out early, or do you have an upset team that's making a long run? Let me know in the comments below of what you think is going to happen during these playoffs. And we are about 10 minutes away from it starting, so I'm going to go ahead and go home so I can get in front of my TV, and we will see what comes out of these next few weeks. So thank you again, and enjoy the games. Go Avs!